Every thought does not need your attention. Sometimes you have to tell yourself to shut the up. What? If you just can't breathe through it, tell yourself to shut the fuck up. Do that. Because sometimes gentle parenting ourselves is also not the best thing. Shh, fuck up. I'm gonna have to give myself like a big hug after this, because girl, that's heavy. The brain loves consistency. This is why it's important not to let every thought pass. This is why it's important to have boundaries with yourself, because for some reason, a couple years ago, I was listening to a guided meditation and she was saying to let the thought pass, let it flow, let it pass. And I had convinced myself that I should let every thought flow so it could leave me. That was the worst thing I could have ever done. And I don't know why. I do know why I did that, because I heard her say that. And I figured, like, it's a meditation. So, this must be, I can apply this in my life. This is how I stay present. I have my retainers in. Yeah, no, that wasn't good. Because if if you have anxiety, or if you're an overthinker, then you know exactly what happens when you let one thought, one fear, one insecurity, one worst case scenario finish. 10 more come. And then 10 thoughts becomes a story. And now you're living out and physically responding, reacting to this imaginary story that you've created in your head. And this is why I love the brain. But man, the brain does not, I say this all the time. The brain does not know the difference between what's happening in real life and what we have imagined in our heads. Do you know how dangerous that can be? But do you also know how powerful that could be? I had a therapist, some therapists ago one time. She told me, not every thought is true. And I was like, what? She interrupted the entire program, because then I'm like, oh shit. But why does it feel like they are? And we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about that. Honestly, what makes all this complicated is the same thing that makes life complicated. It's the same thing that makes humans complicated, and that is emotions. Thoughts create feelings, and feelings are so loud. You could have been in a heated argument with someone a few years ago, right? And not remember exactly what was said, but you're definitely gonna remember how they made you feel, and that's enough to make you just not want to speak to nobody. Or maybe you do want to speak to, depending on what the conversation was and how you felt, okay? So that made me wonder, what comes first? Is it the thought or the feeling then? Kind of like the chicken or the egg, which one is it? And at first, I thought it was so obvious, because you have a thought like, nobody likes me, and automatically you're gonna get those feelings of sadness, rejection, loneliness. But then I also noticed something else that proves the feeling comes before the thought. Like, have you ever woke up on the wrong side of the bed? Have you ever woke up on the wrong side of the bed? Okay. Anxious, pissed off, upset, sad, just over the day already. And so then you just woke up, nothing happened. But now what your brain is doing is it's scanning and looking for evidence to validate your feelings. So maybe sometimes the feeling does come first, and the thought arrives afterwards to justify the feeling. Crazy. Every few years or so, I'm on this journey of asking myself, who are you? And I swear, each time I do that, I really like listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza talk about conditioning. I had a brain fart. Basically, the idea is that we are memorized versions of ourselves. Memorize emotion, memorize responses, memorize stories. That's why a lot of the times it's hard to get beyond ourselves, because a lot of our thoughts are not conscious, they're automatic. The brain is running a program and it's sticking to the script. It doesn't care if it's true, because if we rehearse it long enough, we'll start to believe that it is true. Joe also talks about how we are conditioning ourselves to live in the past, not because we want to, but because the brain loves familiarity. If you've spent years feeling rejected, the brain is going to look for reasons to justify that feeling. If you've spent years doubting yourself, the brain is going to become incredibly efficient at showing you why you're not ready. And it becomes this constant cycle, this constant loop. And it hit me how much of my present thoughts are reflections of what's actually happening in my life at this moment, and how many of those thoughts are actually echoes of old experiences. Knowing the difference is important. Something I like to do now when I can, I'm not perfect at it, I like to ask myself, is this fact or is this an interpretation? For example, if I went out with a guy, which I did, and he never texts me back and it's been a week, I start having these feelings of like, they don't like me? Are they upset with me? Is it something that I said? The fact is, he did not text me back. The interpretation is, it's something that I said. But here's the tricky part. Just because it is an interpretation doesn't make it any less real. Because once the brain creates the interpretation, it immediately starts searching for evidence. Like, you see, they did sound different yesterday. Or they did look at me kind of funny when I said that. Maybe they don't like me anymore. One thought becomes 10, 10 becomes a story. And suddenly you've built this entire story around something that has not been confirmed. We do it to ourselves every time. Because our lovely, incredible brain is not always looking for the truth. A lot of the times it's just looking for consistency. What you consistently think about, how you consistently show up, the stories you consistently tell yourself about yourself. The brain loves consistency. Not because it wants to hurt us or make us feel bad, but it wants the stories we're telling ourselves to make sense. And so it will find a way to make that make sense. But then I noticed something even stranger. Sometimes I could logically prove a thought wasn't true. I could challenge the evidence. I could realize that I'm tripping right now. And yet I still wanted to stay in that feeling. I still wanted to stay mad. I still wanted to stay upset. And that was odd to realize. Because if I knew the thought wasn't true, why was it so hard for me to let it go? And so the only conclusion that I could come up with is that thoughts and emotions don't always move at the same speed. My mind had caught up with the fact that this isn't true and I'm spiraling, I'm tripping right now. But my body was still responding, was still reacting. So what was happening was the thought was changing faster than the feeling. Yikes. If we've spent years rehearsing these emotional states like anxiety, fear, rejection, self-doubt, eventually those emotions are going to start to feel familiar. Not comfortable, but familiar, safe. A long time ago, when I had first started going to therapy, I remember telling the therapist, like, I enjoy being angry. That was an emotional state I was constantly living out back then. And it's crazy. I'm gonna have to give myself like a big hug after this, because girl, that's heavy. But why was I doing it? Because the brain likes to stick to the script. And you know, eventually I stopped asking, what am I thinking? And started asking, do I want to engage with this thought at all? The second question is, am I observing reality, or am I collecting evidence for a story that I've created in my head? Question number 3, is this helping me solve something or making me suffer twice? I still overthink. I still get anxious. I recorded this video several times and I forgot the whole point of why I do these videos. And that's to document where I am on this journey of unburying my authenticity and really just discovering who I am at this moment in my life. So yeah, I still have those thoughts that make absolutely no sense at all. The difference now is that I'm more aware and I don't automatically believe them to be true. Till next time.